My name is Claire Whitmore, and I was 32 years old the morning my life quietly split in two. It was 800 a.m. on a Saturday, the kind of morning that should have felt celebratory. Our third anniversary. The candles were still unlit on the dining table, wax untouched, waiting. The $200 bottle of vintage Cabernet sat between two pristine glasses, unopened like a promise that had been stood up. I was sitting on the couch in the same clothes I'd worn the night before, my spine straight, my hands folded in my lap, wide awake, despite not having slept at all. The front door opened. He walked in like someone who expected forgiveness before explanation. Charles kicked off his boots, dropping his keys onto the console table. The sound cracked through the apartment, sharp and final, echoing far louder than it should have. He looked wrecked, but not the way someone looks after a night of saving a life. This was different. This was cheap alcohol, no sleep emotional indulgence. The kind of exhaustion that comes from reliving old chaos instead of preventing disaster. "Oh," he said casually, rubbing his temples. "You're awake." He faked a wince, a headache meant to earn sympathy. God, what a nightmare. I'm exhausted. He walked past me toward the kitchen, already assuming I'd follow, already expecting concern. When I didn't move, the air shifted. Slowly, he turned around. That's when he saw it. The shirt I'd worn for dinner, the table behind me, the candles, the wine, the untouched glasses. His shoulders tensed. "Claire, please," he sighed, irritation slipping into his voice before guilt ever could. "Don't do this. Do what I asked." My voice didn't shake. That seemed to unsettle him more than anger ever could. "The silent treatment," he snapped. Emma was in a really bad place. She was spiraling. She called me in a panic. I couldn't just ignore that. Emma. His ex-girlfriend, the woman who had been a constant emergency for as long as I'd known him, the aspiring photographer at 26 who was still finding herself at 31. For 3 years, I had been the steady one, the planner, the provider, the one who paid bills on time and fixed problems before they became disasters. Emma was the crisis, the late-night call, the unresolved past. "It was our anniversary," I said quietly. "We had reservations at Le Bernardin. I booked them 4 months ago." He rolled his eyes. Actually rolled them. "I know, and I feel bad about the dinner," he said dismissively. "But this was a life-or-death situation, Claire. She was talking about ending it. What kind of person would I be if I ignored that over a reservation?" There it was, the pivot, the moment he tried to make me the villain for caring about us. "So she was suicidal?" I asked. "Did you call emergency services?" He froze. "What? If she was in immediate danger, you should have called professionals." "Did you?" "No," he said quickly. "I didn't call the cops on her. She just needed someone to talk to. She needed to not be alone." I stood up and took a step closer. That's when I smelled it. Not antiseptic, not hospital, not fear. It was perfume, Emma's floral, powdery scent, mixed with stale beer, vapes, something intimate, familiar. "You smell like her apartment," I said. His face flushed crimson. "We had a drink after she calmed down," he stammered, "just to settle her nerves. We fell asleep watching a movie. Nothing happened." "You missed our anniversary to drink with your ex-girlfriend," I said. "She needed me," he shouted, voice cracking. "God, you are so insecure. You can't handle that. I care about people. You would have understood if you trusted me, instead of being so jealous." That sentence ended everything. "You would have understood if you trusted me." I looked at him, then really looked. The defensiveness, the entitlement, the complete absence of remorse. He wasn't sorry. He felt owed my stability while he chased emotional chaos from his past. I didn't argue. I turned and walked toward the bedroom. "Claire," he called after me, his voice rising. "Are you walking away from me?" I pulled my suitcase from the closet and set it on the bed. "Oh my God," he laughed harshly. "You're packing. You're being dramatic." I opened my drawer and reached beneath my folded sweaters. My fingers brushed velvet. Behind me, his laughter died. I pulled out the small navy box and held it in my hand, the ring I had planned to give him that night. When he saw it, his face didn't just pale. It collapsed. And in that moment, he finally understood what he had lost. Charles stared at the ring box like it was a live wire. For a long second, neither of us moved. The room felt suspended as if time itself was holding its breath. His mouth opened closed again. The easy confidence he'd walked in with, the indignation, the moral superiority, evaporated in real time. "Claire." His voice dropped to a whisper. "Is that... were you?" I didn't answer him. I didn't open the box. I didn't give him the courtesy of seeing the diamond catch the light. That future didn't belong to him anymore. I slipped the box into the pocket of my jacket. The sound of velvet against fabric was quiet, but it landed like a gunshot. He lunged forward a step. Wait, no, no, no. You were going to propose last night. I turned back to the bed and opened the suitcase. 3 days of clothes, my laptop, toiletries. Efficient, clean. No dramatics. I had already grieved him while sitting alone on that couch, staring at candles that never burned. You didn't know he rushed on words tumbling over each other now. Claire, I swear if I had known, I never would have gone. I would have told Emma to. I stopped. Just for a second. Slowly I turned to face him. That's the problem, I said quietly. You shouldn't have needed a ring to know who to choose. His face crumpled, not into anger this time, not into defensiveness, but into fear, real fear. The kind that comes when consequences finally arrive uninvited. He stepped closer, blocking the doorway. Please, let's talk about this. I made a mistake, one night. That's all it was. One night I repeated. On our anniversary. With your ex-girlfriend. After lying to me. After making me feel guilty for having boundaries. That's not fair, he said desperately. You know I love you. I looked at him, really looked at him, and realized something chillingly simple. Love wasn't the issue. Respect was. I zipped the suitcase closed. The sound was final. Claire, he said, his voice cracking. You're really going to walk away. We live together. You can't just leave. I can, I said. And I am. Tears filled his eyes instantly, too fast, too sudden, like a reflex he'd practiced. He reached for my arm, fingers brushing my sleeve. I love you, he said again, louder this time, like volume could make it truer. I stepped out of his reach. You love how I make your life stable, I replied. You love that I'm here when everything else falls apart. But when chaos calls you at midnight, you don't hesitate. He shook his head frantically. That's not true. You're my future. No, I said softly. I was your safety net. I picked up the suitcase and moved past him. He tried to grab the handle, his fingernails scraping against the fabric, but I pulled it free. He followed me down the hallway, footsteps heavy, panicked. You're overreacting, he pleaded. We can fix this. Couples go through worse. I stopped at the front door. I turned back just once. When you came home this morning, I said you didn't apologize. You explained. You justified. You blamed me for reacting. That told me everything I needed to know. I opened the door. Claire, he shouted, his voice breaking into something raw and ugly, something that might have woken the neighbors. I stepped outside, closed the door gently behind me, and listened to the lock click. Then I walked away, down the stairs, into my car, into silence. I didn't turn on the radio. I didn't cry. I just drove, feeling lighter with every mile, as if my body had finally released a weight it had been carrying for years without my permission. The first 48 hours would be chaos. But that morning, that moment was clarity. The hotel room smelled like detergent and nothing else. No perfume, no memories, no echoes of arguments trapped in the walls. That first night, I sat on the edge of the stiff mattress suitcase, still unopened. My phone face down, on the nightstand like a ticking device I refused to defuse. I already knew what I'd find if I turned it over. Apologies wrapped in panic. Accusations disguised as concern. Love declarations sharpened into weapons. I waited anyway. The phone vibrated once. Then again. Then it didn't stop. By midnight, it had skidded halfway across the nightstand from the constant buzzing, inching toward the edge like it wanted to jump. I finally picked it up, not to respond, but to confirm something I already understood. 14 missed calls, 22 text messages, all from Charles. The first few were breathless and frantic. Claire, please pick up. I'm freaking out. I didn't mean it like that. I was exhausted. Please come back so we can talk like adults. I'm shaking. I can't sleep. You're scaring me. I felt nothing. Not numbness, clarity. The kind that comes after the storm has already passed, and you realize the house standing in front of you was never safe to begin with. By morning, the tone shifted. This is unfair. You're punishing me for trying to help someone. You're being incredibly cold. You're really going to throw away 3 years over one misunderstanding. I read them like clinical notes, detached, almost fascinated by the predictability. There it was, the reframing, the subtle accusation. Somehow his choice had already become my cruelty. I turned the phone face down again. The ring box sat in the pocket of my jacket, heavier than it had ever felt before, not because of regret, but because of what it represented now. Not a future lost, but a future narrowly escaped. On Monday, I went to work. I showed up. I answered emails. I reviewed budgets and timelines and deliverables. Numbers behaved. Numbers didn't twist reality to suit their needs. 2 plus 2 never told you that your boundaries were insecurity. It never rewrote history and called it love. By Wednesday, the messages changed again. This time they were small. I miss you. The apartment feels empty. I found your coffee mug. I didn't realize how quiet it gets without you. I didn't reply. I didn't need to. The image of his face when he saw the ring box was burned into my mind. His sudden understanding, his horror. That was the closure. Anything else would have diluted it. 3 weeks later, I returned to the apartment to collect the rest of my things. I timed it carefully. Tuesday morning. He'd mentioned a standing team meeting once, bragging about how indispensable he was. I doubted that now, but I didn't want a confrontation. The place looked wrong the moment I stepped inside. Takeout containers littered the coffee table. Clothes piled on the couch like they'd been abandoned mid-thought. The air felt stale, heavy with neglect. It wasn't grief, it was disorder. The physical manifestation of someone who no longer had a stabilizing force pretending everything was fine. I packed quietly. Books. My espresso machine. The framed photo from a hiking trip I barely remembered enjoying. With every item I lifted, the truth settled deeper. I hadn't been sharing a life with him, I'd been managing one. As I carried the final box to my car, Mrs. Adler from across the hall shuffled by with her dog. She slowed when she saw me. "Oh, Claire," she said gently. "I haven't seen you in a while. Is everything all right?" I didn't hesitate. I moved out. We broke up. Her eyebrows lifted, then lowered in something like understanding. "I thought so. He's had company lately. That young woman. Loud car. Parks in your spot. Emma. Of course." I smiled, not because it was funny, but because it was confirming. "That's not my spot anymore," I said calmly. "Feel free to complain." As I drove away, I felt it again. Not anger. Relief. I didn't know yet how far the consequences would spiral. I didn't know how quickly chaos would reclaim him once I stepped aside. I only knew this. The ring was no longer a symbol of loss. It was proof I had left in time. If the first few days after I left were about shock, the week that followed was about punishment. Not mine, his. Because once Charles realized I wasn't coming back, that explanations no longer worked, that panic alone wouldn't pull me into orbit again. His messages took on a sharper edge. The desperation hardened into accusation. By Friday, the texts weren't asking how I was anymore. They were telling me who I was. "So this is who you really are. You just disappear when things get hard. I never thought you'd be this cruel." Cruel. For leaving. For choosing myself. For refusing to argue in circles until exhaustion masqueraded as compromise. I blocked his number that night. The silence that followed felt almost violent at first, like stepping into a room where a fire had just gone out. No buzzing phone. No emotional emergencies disguised as intimacy. No background anxiety humming under my skin. I slept for 9 uninterrupted hours. Saturday morning, my phone lit up again, this time with a new name. Lila Hart, Charles's best friend. The woman who had always smiled too brightly at me, who called herself brutally honest and treated infidelity like a personality quirk. I answered once. That was my only mistake. "What the hell are you doing?" Claire Lila snapped before I could even say hello. Her voice was sharp, indignant, vibrating with self-righteous fury. "He's on the floor, crying. You can't just wave an engagement ring in his face and abandon him like this. That's emotional abuse." I sat on the edge of the hotel bed, staring out the window at traffic crawling along the interstate. The detachment surprised even me. It felt like watching a scene from a movie I no longer recognized as my own. "I didn't wave it," I said calmly. "I packed it." "That's semantics," she scoffed. "You knew what you were doing. He made a mistake. One night. You don't destroy someone over that." "One night," I repeated. "With his ex-girlfriend. On our anniversary. After lying to me." She inhaled sharply, annoyed. "You're missing the point. He was trying to be a good person." "He came home smelling like her perfume and beer," I said evenly. "He didn't save a life. He went on a date." There was a pause. Then anger. "You're heartless," Lila spat. "After everything he did for you." I almost laughed. "What he did for me?" I asked quietly. "Tell Charles he has until the end of the month to figure out the lease. I'll pay my half until then. After that, I'm done." I hung up before she could respond. Then I blocked her number. His sister's number. 2 mutual friends who had already sent thinly veiled messages about forgiveness and being the bigger person. I went to work on Monday like a ghost. And for the first time in years, I loved it. I buried myself in project timelines, cost analyses, meetings that started on time and ended with conclusions. There was something deeply comforting about environments where accountability mattered, where facts weren't negotiable, where nobody rewrote reality, because their feelings demanded it. Math didn't lie. By Wednesday, Charles's attempts broke into something smaller, sadder. I miss you. The apartment is so quiet. I found your gray sweater. It still smells like you. I'm sleeping on the couch. I didn't respond. Not because I was strong, because I didn't need to. The memory of his face when he saw the ring, that moment of dawning horror, was enough. It told me he finally understood the magnitude of what he'd thrown away. Words would only soften that truth. Silence, I realized, wasn't avoidance. It was consequence. And it was working. I didn't hear what happened next from Charles. I heard it from everyone else. That's how it always goes, isn't it? You try to exit cleanly, quietly, but stories have a way of leaking through the cracks. Mutual friends talk. Neighbors observe. Someone gets drunk and overshares. The truth arrives in fragments uninvited. And every fragment confirmed the same thing. Once I was gone, the space I'd held didn't stay empty for long. Emma moved in. Not officially, of course. Not on paper. But practically, undeniably, completely. Her car was suddenly a permanent fixture in the lot. Her things appeared on the balcony. Her laugh, too loud, too careless, started echoing through walls that had once held routines and order. Charles didn't waste time grieving. He replaced. At first it looked romantic from the outside. At least that's how they framed it. A reconnection. Two people rediscovering something that had been misunderstood. He told friends he'd finally realized who truly understood him. Emma posted filtered photos of wine glasses and City Lights captions about finding your way back home. I saw none of it directly, but I heard enough. What he didn't tell anyone, what he couldn't spin, was how quickly reality reasserted itself. Without me, the apartment bills didn't magically pay themselves. Groceries didn't restock out of thin air. Rent didn't pause for emotional healing. The stability he'd always leaned on was gone, and Emma, for all her intensity and artistic sensitivity, wasn't interested in replacing it. Within the first month, he borrowed money from her. Within the second, it was thousands. Just until this project takes off, he told her. Just until I land this contract. She believed him, because she always had. The apartment shifted. Creative friends came over. Late nights turned into chaos. Equipment piled up. Dishes stayed in the sink. The quiet sanctuary I'd curated became a revolving door of noise and excuses. And when Emma asked him to contribute to clean, to help to grow up, he said the same things he'd once said to me. You're stifling me. You're too uptight. Stop acting like my mom. The irony was almost poetic. The final collapse came faster than anyone expected. 4 months after I left, I was out for drinks with a colleague when she hesitated, then slid her phone across the table. You might want to see this, she said gently. It was an Instagram story. Black background. White text. The universal language of regret. It's crazy how you can lose the best thing that ever happened to you for someone who treats you like an option. Lesson learned. I stared at it for a moment, then handed the phone back. She finally left him, my colleague asked. Better, I said, already knowing the answer. He'd cheated. With a 19-year-old event promoter he met at a club. Emma came home early and found them together, his old pattern replayed with a younger cast. When I heard, I laughed. Not out of spite, out of release. Because for the first time, his chaos had nothing to do with me. And that was freedom. 6 months passed. If you've never rebuilt your life from the ground up, let me tell you something they don't warn you about. It's addictive. The first month is hell. Your body expects habits that no longer exist. Your mind reaches for routines that have been ripped away. Every silence feels suspicious. Every calm moment feels temporary, like it's waiting to collapse. The second month is work. Real, unglamorous work. Paperwork. Logistics. Learning how to occupy the mental space that used to be filled with managing someone else's emotions. But by the third month, something clicks. You realize how much weight you were carrying that was never yours to begin with. I wasn't just free of Charles. I was free of the constant low-grade anxiety he called passion. Free of crisis management, masquerading as intimacy. Free of being the adult in a relationship with someone who confused chaos for depth. I threw myself into the things I'd put on hold. At work, I stopped saying yes to everything and started saying yes to the right things. I focused. I led. I delivered. By the end of summer, I was promoted to senior project manager, the kind of role people don't get by accident. It came with a raise that felt less like a reward and more like confirmation. On weekends, I learned how to be alone without being lonely. Long walks, early mornings, coffee shops where no one knew my history. Silence that felt earned. And then quietly, without fireworks, I met Daniel. It wasn't dramatic. no sparks flying across the room. We met at a climbing gym, bonded over our shared inability to trust the auto belay system, and ended up laughing more than climbing. He worked in healthcare administration. He was calm, direct, present. On our first date, he asked about my boundaries before my past. That alone told me everything. We took things slowly. 3 dates turned into dinners. Dinners turned into weekends. No exes lurking in the background. No midnight emergencies. No tests of loyalty disguised as vulnerability. When he had a bad day, he told me. When I did, we ordered takeout and watched terrible sci-fi movies. There was no chaos to decode, just comfort, just consistency. Around that time, I sold the ring. I didn't make a ceremony out of it. I walked into the jeweler, placed the box on the counter, and watched the man appraise it with clinical detachment. When he told me the number, I nodded. The money didn't feel like loss. It felt like release. I used it toward the down payment on a condo. My place. My taste. No compromises disguised as teamwork. No neutral decor to keep the peace. Just clean lines, dark wood, and art that made me feel something. One evening, while assembling furniture in my new living room, I caught my reflection in the window. I looked different. Not happier in a loud way, happier in a settled way. I hadn't escaped heartbreak. I had outgrown it. And I didn't know it yet, but the past wasn't done knocking. I wasn't thinking about Charles when I saw him again. That felt important. I was downtown on a Tuesday evening, wandering through a high-end furniture store with a tablet tucked under my arm, debating between 2 sectionals that cost more than my first car. My condo was almost finished now, walls painted, shelves filled space finally shaped by my choices instead of compromises. I was testing the firmness of a charcoal leather sofa when the hairs on the back of my neck stood up. That instinct, that quiet internal alarm, hadn't disappeared. I just learned to trust it. I turned around, and there he was, standing near the entrance like a ghost that hadn't realized it was dead yet. Charles looked smaller. That was the first thing that struck me. Not physically, but energetically. The confidence he used to wear so casually was gone, replaced by something tentative and hollow. He was dressed in old jeans and a hoodie that had seen better years, clutching a cheap iced coffee like it was a lifeline. He stared at me as if I might vanish if he blinked. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then he took a hesitant step forward. "Claire," he said. His voice was quiet, careful. Charles Bishush replied, nodding politely. "Polite." The word tasted strange in my mouth, but not unpleasant. "How are you?" he asked. He seemed unprepared for my calm. His eyes flicked over my clothes, a tailored coat boots I'd saved for and chosen myself then, to the sofa behind me, the price tag still dangling from the arm. "You look really good," he said softly. "I am," I replied. "I really am." That was the moment his face cracked. He'd expected anger, or longing, or bitterness. He didn't know what to do with indifference. "I heard about your promotion," he said quickly, grasping for familiarity. "Lila told me. Congratulations. I always knew you'd go far." "You used to say I worked too much," I corrected gently. "But thank you." He flinched. "Claire," he said after a beat, stepping closer, lowering his voice. "Can we talk? Just 5 minutes. I tried texting you, but—" "I blocked you," I said calmly. I know he nodded, swallowing hard. "And I deserved it. I need you to know I messed up. Emma was a mistake, a massive one. I checked my watch not as a power move, but because I had dinner plans." "I know," I said. "I heard." His shoulders sagged, relieved that I already knew. "She used me," he rushed on. "Emotionally, financially, drained my savings. I'm staying on Lila's couch right now because I couldn't afford the apartment alone." Tears filled his eyes, real this time. "And the worst part," he whispered, "every time she treated me like dirt, I thought of you, of how safe I felt with you, how you never made me anxious." He reached out his hand, hovering near my arm. "I miss us," he said. "I miss my best friend. I know I broke your trust, but people grow. I've grown. We could start over slowly. I can make it up to you." There it was, the pitch. The speech he'd rehearsed in the shower. The last card he had left to play. I looked at his hand, then at his face. And I remembered the anniversary morning. The smell of another woman's perfume. The way he'd told me I was insecure for having boundaries. "Do you remember what you said to me that day?" I asked. He frowned. I said a lot of things. "You said I would have understood if I trusted you." His eyes lit up with hope. "Yes, and I was wrong to say that. I know that now." "No," I said gently. "You weren't wrong." He froze. "What?" "You were right," I continued. "If I had trusted you, I would have been a fool. but I trusted myself instead, and I understood exactly what I needed to do. I stepped back, creating space between us. I don't hate you, Charles, I said. I just don't think about you enough to hate you. We're not starting over. We're not anything. His face crumpled. But the ring, he whispered. You wanted to marry me. You can't just turn that kind of love off. I didn't turn it off, I replied evenly. You killed it. He stared at me stunned. I sold the ring I added. It helped pay for my condo. So in a way, you did help me build my future, just not the one you wanted to be in. I picked up my tablet. I have to go, I said. Daniel's waiting. We're making dinner. Daniel, he repeated faintly. My boyfriend, I said. He trusts me. And I trust him. It's nice. I turned and walked away. I didn't look back. Behind me, in the middle of